Hello, friends. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to this series on the 8 limbs of yoga. My name is Michelle Fondin and I'm the author of 12 published books, including The 8 Limbs of Yoga for Modern Times, a practical guide to the Yoga Sutras of Patañjali. You can find all of my published books on Amazon. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for subscribing below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. I teach meditation online on demand. You'll get your personalized mantra from me. You can register and start on demand today at the link below. Today, we are talking about the 4th Niyama, or personal observances, and that is Svadhyaya. I kind of like that word, Svadhyaya. It means self-study or spiritual study. In fact, when I learned about Svadhyaya, it was translated to mean study of the spiritual texts. We're going to talk a little bit about both things, self-study and study of spiritual texts. So if you're a yoga teacher, a yogi, a yoga teacher in training, or you run a yoga teacher training program, make sure to stay tuned and check out my playlist here on all of the 8 limbs of yoga study and the Yoga Sutras of Patañjali. Let's start with the Yoga Sutra pertaining to Svadhyaya. Self-study and introspection deepen communion with the divine. Yoga Sutra, chapter 2, verse 44. What is self-study? We are in a time which I refer to as deep psychology. What does this mean? It means that now, more than ever before, people are looking into themselves deeply through astrology, psychology, personality assessments and tests, and all other forms of self-healing. It's incredible. There's been an explosion of information about the study of the self, which is super interesting. However, in the Yoga Sutras of Patañjali, I believe that self-study, while it's perfect to study the mind, the intellect, the ego, the personality, and of course that can lead you to union with your higher self, I believe that Patanjali was really referring to the self-study of the higher self, the spiritual self, and getting to know your spiritual self intimately. So there are many ways in which you can do this. Now, of course, self-study through psychology, personality tests can give you a segue to reaching your higher spiritual self, but of course, so can meditation. Now, I truly believe that if you are meditating and you've learned to meditate and you've been meditating, maybe for a shorter duration of time, that if you don't study yourself on a psychological level, emotional level, your ego, your past wounds and all of that, that it can be really difficult to attain enlightenment, that enlightened state of transcending into your higher spiritual self, because the wounding is still there, that you're still looking at things through the lens of the ego. And I speak a lot about this in my book, Heal Yourself, A Return to Wholeness. So my teacher, Dr. David Simon, one of my great teachers who is now deceased and on the other side of the veil, and I'm sure helping me now, he used to say that if you do all the meditation in the world, but you don't heal yourself at a core level, meaning you don't study yourself, heal your inner wounds, transcend your ego, and so on and so forth, that you could do all the meditation in the world, but it's not going to help you reach enlightenment because you're still stuck. You're stuck in your past wounds, your past impressions, you're still stuck in your relationships. And so you really need to do both in order to transcend. Another thing that Patanjali was talking about was the study of the spiritual texts, the study of spiritual literature. So ancient yogis used to study the Upanishads, the Dhammapada, the words of the Buddha, and the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, the seat of yoga and meditation was ancient India. And so they were studying these as students. They were studying these ancient texts. Now, in the olden days, these stories were oral tradition that were passed down from teacher to student orally. They had to memorize them perfectly. And that's why a lot of the ancient texts sounded like poetic verses, and it's because it made it for easier memorization. Even though I find that a lot of spiritual texts are inherently flawed, and the reason why I find them flawed, and many people do as well, is because they were transmitted through humans that were unhealed for the most part. But in that, there are many verses in spiritual texts, whether you're talking about the Hindu texts or ancient Vedic texts or Christian or Jewish or Islamic texts, whatever you're referring to, there is a resonance of God consciousness. You might have to dig deep to find it, but there is a resonance of God consciousness. So even though I believe that many of the spiritual texts are flawed because I find that many of them focus more around the rules and regulations surrounding religion, but they are still inspired. So when you read a spiritual text, and I found that the Upanishads was extremely enlightening for me when I first read it cover to cover, I found that the experience of reading it by itself was a transcendent experience. And a lot of people find this when reading other spiritual texts, such as the Bible. And so when you dive deep into a spiritual text and really look for the God consciousness in it, so again, not paying so much attention to like the harsh rules and regulations that may be outlined in that specific text, but really feeling it, you're feeling the God consciousness that comes through it, then you can gain the inspiration. Why? Because the person that wrote the spiritual literature, the spiritual text, had a glimpse into God consciousness. And so in a way, reading the spiritual text can fast track you into feeling unity consciousness. Does that make sense? So we don't read it to follow every word to the T or to memorize every single word and blurt it out and say, I'm a great student, I've memorized everything in this text. That's really not the point and purpose. The point and purpose is deep communion with the divine, which is what the Yoga Sutra outlines. The Yoga Sutra outlines that the point and purpose of self-study or spiritual study, the study of spiritual texts, is to gain deeper clarity, is to gain deeper communion with the divine and really bridge the gap between you and your higher self. And so by doing this, you're merging. Now, a lot of people are afraid of reading spiritual texts because of the aforementioned reasons, the reasons I already mentioned. And I would say if you can keep it light, if you can take it with a grain of salt and really take it for the deeper meaning rather than certain rules and regulations of what you must or must not do, and if you can gain the inspiration through the texts, then that is absolutely perfect. And that is also why we do self-study. We do self-study to drop the judgments of ourselves, to drop the shame, blame game of ourselves and others, and to get to the core of our essence, which is divine light, divine love, unconditional love. So as we do that, we are also gaining deeper communion with the divine, with the divinity within ourselves. So each step you take brings you closer, closer, and closer to that unity consciousness. And that is why Svadhyaya and all the yamas and niyamas are so essential as we move through the 8 limbs of yoga. I hope this was helpful, yogi, on your path to understanding the 8 limbs of yoga and the Yoga Sutras of Patañjali. I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications, and thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this with your yoga friends, your yoga teacher friends, and if you're running a yoga teacher training program, to share this with your students. I want to thank you for your support of my YouTube channel. You can purchase one of my 12 published books. You can join one of my courses. Everything is on my website, and I will see you in the next video.